All right, so you wanted a deep dive into all this controversy surrounding the Washington Post and LA Times
Yeah.
and their decision to skip presidential endorsements this year. Well, we've got a stack of articles.
We do.
From Salon, The Guardian, The New York Times,
All the big ones.
Fox News.
Even Fox.
We've got it all. Ready to unpack it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so these papers broke with decades
Super decade.
of tradition, right? And that sparked a whole media firestorm.
Yeah.
I mean, there were resignations, accusations of cowardice.
Oh, yeah.
Even Donald Trump is celebrating, right? Gloating on Twitter.
Absolutely.
So we're going to try to unpack all this. Is this a principled stand for journalistic independence? Or are we seeing billionaire owners buckle under political pressure? What do you think?
Well, it's definitely intriguing. I mean, you think about it. The Washington Post, owned by, Jeff Bezos,
Right.
LA Times, owned by Patrick Soon-Shiong, both announced they would not be endorsing any candidate.
Yeah, which is unprecedented, really.
Unprecedented.
The Washington Post CEO, Will Lewis,
Right.
claimed this was a return to their roots.
Back to basics.
But didn't they, they endorsed in the past, haven't they?
Well, that's the thing. The Post's own reporting contradicts that. Along with several other sources we have, they suggest that Bezos himself personally intervened. He squashed a planned endorsement of Kamala Harris.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So why is that significant?
Well, you have to remember the history, right? Trump has very publicly targeted Bezos and Amazon.
Right.
He's even been accused of using his position to kind of meddle with government contracts. So
some are saying Bezos is basically playing it safe, worried about retaliation if Trump wins a second term?
Exactly. I mean, that's one interpretation. And it's fueled by these accusations of cowardice that are coming from really prominent figures like Marty Baron,
Oh, right.
the Post's former executive editor. Even the Post's union has entered the conversation.
What are they saying?
They're pointing to management interference and a wave of readers canceling their subscriptions.
It's getting serious.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of strong reactions, over at the LA Times, even more dramatic,
Yeah.
Ariel Garza,
Right.
their editorial page editor,
Yes.
resigned in protest.
Big statement. Her resignation letter is really powerful. She argues that silence in the face of, an election this consequential, it's unacceptable. She sees it as a dereliction of duty.
Wow.
Yeah, and it brings up a larger point, doesn't it? This increasing influence of billionaire owners
Right.
on news coverage. Is this about principled journalistic independence, or is it protecting personal interests?
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because the New York Times, for example, they went ahead and endorsed Harris,
They did.
called it the patriotic choice. It creates quite a contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. And it raises these uncomfortable questions about the motives behind the Post and the Times decisions. In fact, in Barron's interview with The New Yorker, he actually talks about Bezos's past resilience against Trump's pressure, right? But in those instances, it was about Amazon and business dealings.
Right, but this is different. This is that editorial page.
Exactly.
It's the soul of the paper. It's its voice.
It is.
Yeah.
So the question is, what changed? Why this sudden shift from standing up to pressure to seemingly caving in?
Yeah, it's unsettling. And it makes you wonder, if someone like Bezos, with his resources, his platform, this outspoken guy, if he can be influenced in this way,
Right.
what does it mean for smaller publications? For journalists who have a lot less?
Well, that's exactly the point Barron hits on in his interview. He argues that this could embolden Trump, make him believe he can silence anybody. And that's when you get a chilling effect that could really impact the future of a free press.
Makes you rethink how you view these institutions, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think that's why this discussion is so crucial. This isn't just about endorsements. It's about the very essence of journalism, its role in a democracy, and the potential consequences when powerful individuals can wield this kind of influence over the information we receive.
It does make you think, when you pick up your morning paper, is a billionaire's agenda shaping what I'm reading? It's a bit unsettling.
It is. It really is. And it goes back to, what's the fundamental purpose of journalism? Holding power accountable, regardless of who holds that power.
Yeah, and so many people are saying that's missing here, that boldness, that willingness to speak truth to power, even if it ruffles some feathers, even if it risks powerful interests.
And by not taking a stand, they're inadvertently taking a stand.
Right.
Sending a message.
Whether it's intentional or not.
Of caution.
Of self-preservation.
Which, in this context, is troubling.
So we've seen these decisions. We've seen the fallout. We've talked about the implications. I just keep coming back to what happens next. What does this mean for the future?
That's the big question, isn't it? If institutions like the Washington Post, known for their investigative journalism, their role in Watergate, can be swayed like this, what does it mean for the future of journalism itself?
Right.
What does it mean for the future of democracy itself?
Right.
It really underscores the need for all of us to be much more savvy, news consumers.
Right.
We can't just passively take in information.
Right.
We need to be actively questioning it,
Right.
analyzing it.
Especially now with these lines getting blurrier and blurrier
Absolutely.
between, ownership, politics, news coverage.
It's unsettling. It really circles back to, that fundamental purpose of journalism,
With that?
to hold power accountable,
Right.
no matter who holds that power.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people are saying is missing here. That boldness, that willingness to speak truth to power.
Yeah.
Even if it ruffles feathers, even if it means risking some powerful interests.
Exactly. And that's why for a lot of people, these non-endorsements, they feel like a betrayal of that duty.
Of that core journalistic duty.
Yeah, a retreat from those principles these institutions are supposed to uphold.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
By choosing not to take a stand,
Right.
they're inadvertently taking a stand.
Absolutely. They're sending a message.
Yeah. Whether it's intentional or not.
Exactly.
What is that message? A message of what?
I think caution, self-preservation.
Which in this context is very troubling.
It is.
So we've seen the decisions, we've seen all the fallout, talked about the implications. What happens next? Keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the future?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
If institutions like the Washington Post, we're talking the paper that was famous for their role in Watergate.
Right.
If they can be swayed like this, what does that say about the future of journalism?
Right.
What does it say about the future of democracy itself?
And for us, as readers, as citizens,
Yeah.
what do? Do we just kind of accept this as the new normal?
Right.
Or is there some way to kind of push back against this trend?
That's where individual action becomes crucial. It's about supporting those independent media outlets,
Right.
being a critical consumer of information,
Right.
demanding transparency from those in power. These are all tools we have.
So democracy dies in darkness,
That's right.
but it can also die in plain sight
If we become complacent.
if we allow, those in power to control the narrative.
That's right. This should be a wake-up call,
Yeah.
a reminder that, a free press, that's not a guarantee.
No.
That's something you got to fight for. You got to protect it,
It's a responsibility.
nurture it, and that responsibility falls on each and every one of us.
This is making me think about all those choices we make every day.
Yeah,
Where we get our news, who we trust,
absolutely.
how we engage with the information that's out there.
It's a call to be informed. It's a call to be engaged. And it's a call to be willing to speak up for what you believe in. Because ultimately, the future of journalism, the future of democracy, depends on us, depends on an informed and active citizenry.
It's not just about this election, though, is it?
Right.
This sets a precedent.
It does.
What if powerful people or companies, they see this and they realize they can pressure media outlets to silence anybody they don't like?
That's the concern. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And the concern is other media owners see this. They see there's not really consequences.
Right.
And they start thinking, well, if Bezos can get away with it,
Right.
why can't I?
Right.
And that's where you start to see a real erosion of a free and independent press.
And what about these newspapers themselves?
Yeah.
In the long run, if their own journalists are demoralized,
Right.
if readers are losing trust,
Right.
can they still even be effective? Can they do their job?
It's a huge blow to their credibility.
Yeah.
And rebuilding that trust, that's going to be a long and hard process.
It is.
They're going to have to really show they're committed to journalistic integrity.
Right.
And not just with words,
Right.
but with actions.
It's almost ironic, isn't it? We're talking about the Washington Post,
Right.
the paper that brought down Nixon,
Right.
Watergate.
Right.
Now they're being accused of kind of caving to a different kind of power play.
Yeah. And it is a stark reminder, even institutions with, this history of courage, of integrity, they're not immune to these pressures.
No.
A free press is
Yeah.
a constant struggle, a battle that each generation has to fight anew.
This whole deep dive, it's been a real eye-opener for me. Makes me think more critically about everything I read
Right.
and where it's coming from, what forces are at play.
Absolutely.
But it also makes me wonder, what can we do? We're just individuals.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to push back against this kind of influence and control over information?
There is. And it starts with awareness,
Hmm.
understanding the forces at play, recognizing the tactics that are being used,
Yeah.
being really vigilant about detecting potential biases.
Being media literate, like we talked about.
Exactly, not just taking in what's given to you,
Yeah.
but actively questioning, analyzing, seeking out different perspectives,
Right.
and supporting independent journalism is critical.
How to be that.
Subscribing to publications that are prioritizing truth and accountability,
Hmm.
even if it means paying for it, that's an investment in a free press.
Because in the end, a free press isn't really free, is it?
It's not. It requires our support, our financial support, and our active engagement.
So this has been a real call to action.
It is.
We can't be complacent. We can't just sit back.
We can't. We need to be informed, we need to be engaged, and we need to be willing to speak up for what we believe in.
Because a thriving democracy really does depend on a strong and independent media. Right.
It absolutely does, and that depends on all of us doing our part. So I want you to keep thinking about this. If even these powerful institutions can be influenced, how much more important is individual action? What will you do to make sure that truth has a voice?
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Keep those questions coming and keep diving deeper.